Hey there, welcome to my channel. Today in this video, we will implement the clean architecture in the practical way by keeping eye on the principles. If you haven't watched the previous episode, I'm highly encouraging you please to go ahead and watch the previous episode to understand the flow of the clean architecture and what problem it is solving in practical. Alright, so let's put our hands on the coding part. So here you can see in the controller, everything is tied up together, right? So one thing is missing right here. So what exactly? Can you guess it? I think if you go to this diagram, here you can see in the innermost circle, which is called Enterprise Business Rule, the entities. That is exactly missing right here. So in our application, the main thing, like main enterprise business rule is our product, right? Which is we haven't added anywhere. We are directly entering or directly we are just creating the product to the database and we are not doing anything else, right? So that thing is missing. Let's try to create that one. Let's go ahead and create a directory here that is called entity. All the entities we are going to keep inside this entities directory. So here we are going to create one more file that is called a product, right? .ts. Perfect. So here inside the product, let's try to add some code quickly. So we have created one class that is called product, right? So this is our entity where we will be having our name, description, price, stock, and etc. The main source of the business will be product. Based on the products, we will be going to perform some kind of operation on it, right? So where maybe seller can sell the product and buyer can buy the product or something like that way. All right. So let's keep it very simple. And you can add as many as like, the functionalities right here in the class also. So where maybe we can validate the product, maybe name should have to be present, description has to be present, price should not supposed to be less than 1 or something like that, and stock should not supposed to be have to be minus or something like that. All those validation we can put it right here in this class, right? Then while we are going to create the product, by using that specific product instance, then we can validate everything right here. So all these rules we can add it right there, right? Perfect. Then let's move forward and where we can implement all this product. Can you see like in this diagram, we need to have a kind of use case which is going to expose or which is going to deal with that specific business rule where we will be writing some kind of the business logic right here where application business rules will be there. How we can operate that product or how we can patch the product, create the product. All this like the core rules, the core business exactly it's going to depend on that one only. Right. So let's try to create the use cases. So what will be the use case? Use case we will be create only to handle the business logic, nothing else, right? In order to do that, let's try to create one directory here, right? So that is going to be like interfaces, right? And here inside the interface directory, let's try to create one file. iProduct interactor.ts. Here inside this iProduct interactor, let's try to add some code, right? Which is going to be like export interface iProduct interactor. Let's try to add this unknown word to our workspace. This is going to be like add. Yes, this is cool. Now here we are going to add some method which is going to help us to perform our business logic, right? So first of all, this is going to be like create product. It will accept any kind of input here. This is going to be like input. Input can be anything, like maybe you can mark it as a kind of unknown also if you are not sure about what kind of input it will be. But in this case, like we are not focusing on the type safety at this moment. Maybe in future we can just focus on the type safety by assigning some kind of DTO also here, right? But let's try to mark it as a kind of any at this moment, right? Then one more function we are going to add that is called update stock. Update stock will receive two parameters. One will be the ID, and that is going to be the number. And the second one will be our stock. This is also going to be number, right? Then third one will be our get products. Here we need to give a range. This will be our limit maybe number, and offset also will be number, right? So these are the functions going to help us to perform our business logic, right? So now let's go ahead here inside this source directory. We are going to create one more directory that is called interactors, right? interactors. Inside this interactor, let's try to create one more file that is called product interactor, because this is only interface, right? .ts, and let's try to add some code here. Export class product interactor, and here this is going to be like implements. We need to implement that interface also, which is we have created product interactor interface, right? So it is complaining because we have not implemented the interface methods, right? Which is we have declared in product interactor. So let's try to add that thing, right? Let's quick fix, implement, right? So these are the functions we need to implement, right? Now this layer is ready. Now let's work on the third layer. That is the green one, where we can say presenter, controller, or gateway, whatever we can name it, right? But this layer can be consist of maybe one or more than one or two classes, or maybe more than that also, right? But how we can design that? In that case, our presenter will be a combination of our controller and the routes also. So let's try to do that. So in that case, what we can do, I'm going to rename this controller, the product controller, as a kind of X product controller. So we don't want to delete the whole quotes from here, right? So we are going to create one file here. This is going to be like product controller .ts, right? Let's try to add some code quickly in order to fulfill our product controller, right? Now let's add some code here in the product controller in order to handle our HTTP communications, right? Right, let's try to move it up, right? So create, get, and update, right? So these are the functions, right? So let's go ahead here in the routes. So here inside the routes, right? Let's try to rename that specific file rather than having index, right? This is going to be like our product routes, right? So here inside the product routes, we are going to delete all these things from here because we are not going to use all these things at all, right? So let's try to create one instance of the controller, const new product controller, right? So our product controller is created. Let's use that product controller right here on create product, right? Then controller on get products, then controller on update stock. So this is perfect now. Now our pipeline is clear. While it comes to any kind of request right here, then it will go to routers, all right? Let's try to rename this router as a kind of product router, right? And if it will go to the product router, right, then certain endpoints will be handed over to certain functionality from this controller, right, in the controller. But here in the product controller, how we will serve the request, right? So to serve the request, we need to hook up our business logic layer, right, which is we have this one, the user use case. Now you can see like our controller is pushing some kind of the input to the use case, right? Then interactor is taking care of that specific input and process some kind of the business logic and giving some kind of output right there. And then presenter is taking that output and giving back to the UI. So this is the thing exactly it's happening. So how we can do that? Here inside the product controller, let's declare a variable which is going to hold our product interactor instance, right? Let's declare that variable using the private access modifier. Private. The interactor will be a kind of instance of our iProduct interactor, right? iProduct interactor. So, but how we can assign this? We need to assign some, all right? So how we can do that? We need to add one constructor here, constructor, and inside this constructor, let's say interactor will be iProduct interactor, right? And here this dot interactor will be interactor, right? This interactor variable will going to be passed on the time of initialization of this product controller and will be assigned into our private variable, this one here. Now we have added our interactor, which is going to help us to handle our business logic, right? So let's try to add some code here in this all the functions, right? But what we can do, we can go to our X product controller, right? So let's try to grab all these things from here, right? Copy all these things, right? from our create product, and let's go to product controller on the create product, this one. So what we can do, let's try to add one try catch here, right? And inside this error, let's say we can say next, right? We can put it to error because we don't want to handle the errors right here. So if we found some error right here while we are performing our business logic, right? At that time we will be simply saying like, hey, please handle all the error in the central level, right? So we will just simply passing that specific error to the next iteration or next execution, which is going to help us to handle right here, right? But anyway, this is we are not going to handle it at this moment. So let's go ahead and add some code right here in the try catch. So technically this is not required, right? So let's try to remove this line here. Body is needed because we need to pass that specific things to our business logic. So in this case, what we are going to do, let's say const data will be our await, and in this case our interactor going to take care like this interactor. This is going to like this interactor create product, and inside the create product we need to add our body. All right, so this body will be going here, right? So body, right? And we're going to remove all these things from here, right? And until this one also, this is also not required. Let's try to make it as a kind of comment at this moment. And here inside this 200, let's try to remove all these things and make sure we are returning the data. So right now you can see like we are pretty much remove everything, right? So we have handed over that specific business logic responsibility to our interactor, which is going to help us to create the product. And once everything is done, then it will give some data back, right? And that data we are just providing to our next iteration in terms of to the client, right? So this is the same way we're going to handle the rest of all also. So let's go to get products also, right? So here also we can just like grab this piece of code from here, copy this one, go to product controller, and here also let's say try, and here next error, and here also we can just put it that thing right here. But in this case, what we are going to do, let's say the similar way we did right here, use const data will be our await, and this interactor dot get products, right? So here we need to provide the limit as well as. So how we can do that? So let's try to grab the offset and limit. So offset limit and here we say from request because we have remember, right? This is offset, or if the offset is then assign 0. This is what we're going to do for our limit, right? So let's try that. So limit and simply and by default now you can fairly assign that specific data like limit and offset. So limit and offset. Perfect. Now this data we are going to return it from there. Right. So now our controller is decoupled totally, right? So it is just like handing over all these things to our business logic layer, right? And use case layer, and it is going to take care of all the business rules right there in the get product or maybe the create product, etc. So let's try to handle the last one also, the update stock. So again, go here, right? Let's grab all these things from here, right? Copy and go to the product controller, add it right here. Again, the try catch, right? Next will be error, and here you can just put inside here. This DB connection is not required. These are the two things are required. This is fine, and we can just remove all these things. Let's try to comment it out at this moment. And right here, const, this is going to be like our data. Oh wait, the similar way, this dot interactor dot update stock. And then here there are two parameters are needed. One is called ID. This is already we are grabbing it here, ID, and second one will be our body, right? So this body will be having our this is a kind of number, right? So what we need to do, we need to parse our int, right? Perfect. Now request body we can have the stock, right? This stock we can say stock, right? This stock we can just pass it right here. Then this data we are going to return it here as well as. So can you see now our controller is pretty clean, right? So here in the controller now you can see we have commented out a couple of things like this one, right? Or as an example, this one. So these are the third-party stuff or maybe external library stuff we are not going to handle in the controller, because controller and the routes, this is meant to be only for handling the HTTP request and response. So all the validations, all the if anything need to check right before signing to the business logic, those are the things, those are the operations only we will be performing right here in the controller and routes. Well, now let's move forward to one step further, right? So here in the interactor, right? So as we can see, this layer is ready, this layer is ready, and this layer also is ready, right? And the framework layer, exactly, we have already been added here in the Express, right? So it seems like our layers are ready, but one thing is missing right here. So what exactly missing it is, if you go here in the interface, you can see like this interactor, right? Product interactor, we need to add the business logic, right? To add the business logic, what kind of operations we are going to do? We are going to create the product, right? Once you are going to create the product, that product will be stored somewhere in the database as an example. So what principle says? Principle says like independent of the frameworks and independent of the database as well as, right? So in this case, we should have to have the flexibility at any point of time while we are performing certain operation, then we should supposed to able to swap the database as well as. So let's try to do that, right? In that case, what we are going to do, we are going to create one more interface for that, right? So let's try to create one interface. This is going to be like product repository. Repository.ts, right? Product repository interface, we are going to add some code quickly. Perfect. So our repository is ready. So we have a couple of functions here. This is going to be like create, update, and find, right? So while we are creating a product, we need to have a kind of input, some of the input, which can have like some name or maybe product description. So in this case, we are using the product class, right? And the promise also, while we are creating that product, it should have to return the product as well as, right? In the similar case for our update, it is accepting the ID and the stock and returning the product. And the find also the similar. We are accepting 2 parameters, limit and offset, and it is returning a kind of bunch of the products as a kind of form of array, right? So let's try to implement this iRepository to our actual class, right? So in that case, let's try to create one more directory inside source. This is going to be a repositories. And inside this repositories, let's try to create file. This is called like product repository.ts, right? So let's try to add some code quickly. This is going to be like export class. Perfect. So now our repository is ready. Let's try to implement this repository in our interactor. Let's go to product interactor. Here we are going to create one private variable, just like we did in our product controller, right? The similar way, private. This is going to be like repository will be our product repository. Yeah, this one. And let's try to create one constructor. Constructor also will be having repository will be product repository, which is we will accept from outside. And let's try to assign that specific parameter to our private variable, right? This repository will be repository. Perfect. So now our problem is solved, right? So while we are just creating our product, then let's return this one. This is going to be like async because we need to perform the database operation asynchronously, right? And here also, right? This is going to be like this dot repository. Then the create, this is going to be like our input, right? Then update stock also this similar, just like add this one here. This will be our update will be our ID and stock, right? And here also will be, this is need to delete. Here also will be our All right. And this is going to be like get product repository fine, right? Where we will pass our limit or offset. Perfect. So now our interactor is ready, right? So while we'll be calling our controller, then controller will call our interactor to create the product. Then this specific interactor will call our repository. And can you see like where while we're clicking on this create product and it is going to this one only, interactor only, not to that specific interactor class, right? Why? Because while we are creating the instance of that specific things, you know, that the interactor, we don't care about like what kind of class it is. It may have real implementation or it may have a mock implementation. We don't care. Only we care about like that specific class, whatever we are going to use right here in the controller, all right, as a kind of instance, that has to be implement all those methods of the iProduct interactor, all these functions. If we can see like all these functions are implemented, then we are fine, right? Because the expectation will be while we are going to create the interactor, that specific interactor has to create the product. It may be from this class or maybe some mock class or whatever it is. Let's go to the repository, the product repository, because so far we have implemented everything, right? In the repository level, we have not done anything here, right? So now let's go to the product repository. So let's try to create a couple of things right here. So first of all, let's try to create one private variable, private client, and client will be a kind of pool. It is already been declared right here in the DB connection. Can you see like this is a kind of pool, right? It's a client as a kind of pool. So this is what exactly needed right here in the database also here, right? So this pool, what we are going to do, we will say constructor and here while our constructor will going to be called at that time, we will say this dot client will be pg client, right? Now let's try to add all this database query right here, all right, where we are going to create, update, and define, right? So all those things we need to add it. So let's go here in the X product controller, right? So here let's try to grab all these things, all this query data from here, copy it, and add it right here, right? Definitely we need to mark it as a kind of async. And this one is not DB connection. This is going to like this dot client query, right? Now this is our client query, and this is not the body exactly. This is going to be like data, which is called data.name, or maybe we can directly deconstruct all these things here. This is called as an example name, and this will be our description and price and stock. Perfect. So these are the things we can just keep it from here to here. Stock, right? And once we are receiving the response, then let's make sure we're returning it, right? Return product dot rows 0, right? The first one. Then the similar way we can do for our rest of all also, right? Let's go ahead and copy all these things from here, and let's grab it here. This one is the get product, right? So find here. Now mark it as async and return it. Products dot rows, right? Because it's not giving the autocomplete here. This is not DB connection. This is going to be like our client. Now this autocomplete gonna work, I think. Yes, this is cool. But here we need to add offset, right? This limit and offset we need to add. So first of all, offset will be $1, then limit will be $2. So this 2 parameter we need to provide it. The second parameter will be an array that is called offset and limit. Perfect. Now our second query also ready. Now let's go ahead and grab the update one, right? So let's grab this one and copy and add it right here. Let's put it here, and again we need to mark it as a kind of async, and this is not DB connection. This is going to be like client, and this is exactly, we need to provide it just like our first one is stock. That is, we are grabbing it from here. Second one will be our ID, right? And we need to return this one also. This is called product dot rows, right? The 0. Now our repository is completely ready. So we have created our client and we are performing all the queries accordingly. So now let's go here in the X product controller. Let's drop this one. Delete. Perfect. Let's have a review, exactly whole pipeline, if anything is left right there. So here in the Express app, we are calling the router. So here it is giving error, right? So because we have not clearly created that specific things from here, right? While the product interactor, we are not created and we are not passing it here, right? That is we need to do. And if you go here, right, this create product, then this is calling like create product interactor, right? If you go to this product interactor here, in the product interactor, here also one thing is missing, that is called repository. So here exactly this dependency injection, it comes to the picture, right? Which is going to help us to provide all this or inject all those dependencies, whatever dependencies are needed in order to perform that certain operation. Now here, let's try to create all these dependencies. So first of all, the repository, new product repository, right? Then secondly, we need to create our interactor. Interactor will be new product interactor, right? And this new product interactor will be needed like some input that has to be like iProduct repository. So as you can see, our repository, if you go to repository, it is already implemented iProduct repository interface. So in this case, if you go here, right, then if we assign this one, it has to be perfectly gonna work, right? So let's try to pass this one, repository. Perfect. So it is saying like this as well, like the repository is also a kind of iProduct repository interface, right? Then interactor. So here in the product controller, it is needed iProduct interactor, right? So in this case, this interactor also, the product interactor also, it is implemented that iProduct interactor interface, right? So in this case, it should have to work correctly, right? Let's try to pass this one also. Interactor. So now let's go ahead and try to spin our application, right? So I'm going here, yarn dev. Our server is listening to port 9000. So in this case, let's open that http request.http file, right? Let's try to call this get products. And can you see it is giving the error, right? It is as expected. So if you go and see the console, it is saying like the cannot read property of undefined interactor. So why exactly this interactor is undefined? Because I'm gonna close everything here, right? So if you go to route here, so here in the router, while we are calling this get products endpoint, then it is reaching out to this get product functions from controller, right? So while it is reaching to this get products function right here, and it is trying to reach to our interactor as well as. So here in the constructor is not getting called properly, that's why the interactor is undefined, right? So to do that, right, what we need to do, let's go ahead here. We need to bind that specific controller with this function, right? So let's try to add bind here, bind our controller. Controller, right? The similar thing we are going to do with the other functions as well as. So here, right after that, bind controller, and here also bind controller. Perfect. So now let's try to spin the server once more. Let's go to request.http. Here what we are going to do, we are going to call that get product request, send a request. Now can you see you can get a whole bunch of products, right? Even if you try to update the stock also, let's say I just want to make it 100. Then if you call this one, now this product is going to be 100, right? Perfect. So now one more thing we need to test it out, like this create product. So let's try to send a request to the create product, right? Send request. It is giving error, right? So why exactly it is giving error? So it says like null value column description, because here our request is different and maybe we are accepting some kind of inputs are different, right? So let's try to check it out. So here in the repository, now we can see in the create product, we are having a kind of different name, which is called description, right? So if you go to interactor, product interactor here, and create product, we are simply just passing that input, right? That input, where exactly this is coming from? This is coming from controller. If you go to controller, And controller, you can see like we have a plain body, right? We have not done anything like the validation or maybe certain keys, all the stuff we have not done here, right? So in that case, we are not going to add more code to add the validation logic right here. Let's go to straightforward here in the HTTP request. Let's put instead of the dash, it'll be description, right? Now it should have to work. Let's try to spin server once more and send a request. Now it is perfectly working. Now everything is working well. So can you see like a couple of things we have commented out, the sending email and notify to the promotion service, right? So these are the two things are not belongs here in the product controller. These are the two things what we can do. We can add to our interactor, right? In order to do that, what we need to do, we need to create a couple of more interfaces. Let's go ahead and create interfaces right here, right? So first one will be our iMailer, right? iMailer.ts, right? So here, let's try to add some code. And here, send email will be will be string, and product will be unknown. Product will be unknown, right? And this is going to be like promise, or maybe we can just leave it as it is, all right? Something going to be returned from here, right? Then one more interface we are going to create, that is called message broker. .ts. So in this case, let's say export interface iMessage broker. This is going to be like capitalized, right? And here also we will say notify to promotion service, let's say. Right, this is going to be like product unknown, right? It will return something, let's say. So now these two interfaces are ready. So while we are going to be here in the product interactor here, inside this constructor, we can just like add a couple of more variables, private variables. Let's try to add all those things, right? So private mailer will be iMailer, iMailer, right? So this is we need to import, quick fix, right? iMailer. And one more thing we need to do, like private broker, maybe broker will be iMessage broker. So these are the two things also we need to receive from the constructor, all right? So let's try to do that. So in this case, mailer will be, let's try to copy these things from here, right? Then broker also we need to copy from here. Perfect. Then let's try to add this one, this mailer. It will be mailer. And this broker will be broker, right? So now we can fairly call all these things like while we are going to create our products, where we can perform these operations. Let's say here, inside this create product, let's say we're going to receive the response from the product. This is called const data will be in this repository.data. Then maybe we can do some check here, just like if the data doesn't exist, throw some kind of error. Otherwise, await this mailer, send email to someone at .com, let's say, right? Then data we are going to pass it from here. Then return the data from here. Right, this is going to be like await. Right, so while we are going to create the product, then we will do some checks, and after that send the email, then return the data. So this is going to happen from here. Now the similar thing for our update stock as well as. So let's say const data will be await, right? And in this case, let's say await to, this is going to be like I think this is going to be like from here, right? So once the product is created, then we need to notify to our this one. Await this dot broker notify to the service, going to be like data, right? The new while we'll be going to create a new product, then we will notify to the promotion service, gonna say like, hey, a new product is arrived here, right? So while we are going to update the stock, then we are going to say to the owner like our stock has been updated, right? Otherwise return the data. So now can you see these are the external libraries which is we are using right here, right? So we don't care about like what kind of mailer it is and what kind of message broker it is. Only thing we are care about, like the mailer has to able to send the email, right? Where we will be putting like, and this is to, right? Where we will put like to and product information. Similar thing about the message broker also. We don't care about what kind of message broker we are going to implement in future. Let's say only we are care about this message broker has to notify to the promotion service, right? And while we are creating that message broker, right, that message broker has to implement this specific interface. So this is how exactly it's not tightly coupled with this interactor, right? It is only accepting the interfaces, like as an example for the repository as well as. We don't care about the actual implementation of the repository. It may be PostgreSQL, it may be Oracle, or it may be MySQL. We don't care. Only we are care about that specific repository, which is we are going to implement. It may be mock, or it may be static data, or it may be connecting with the database. Only need to implement this specific interface. So this is how it will going to be work, right? Now let's try to do that. We are going to implement that specific the external libraries also. Let's try to create one directory here, right? New directory, external libraries. So here we are going to create one file that is called our mailer.ts, and one is called messagebroker.ts, right? So here let's try to add some code quickly. So this is our mailer class, right? Which is going to implement the iMailer, right? As a kind of interface, and it is sending the email. So here you can implement the SendGrid implementation as an example. Right, SendGrid implementation. Right, here inside the send email, you can implement your favorite library to send the email, right? The similar thing for our message broker also. Let's say export right, calling message broker. So here you can implement whatever your favorite library. So here, as I said in the interactor, it doesn't care about what kind of library you are being used as a kind of external library outside world. It is only care about like while we are calling this broker, it has to send that specific notify promotion service, right? So while we're calling that mailer, it has to send the email. So this is how it's gonna work, right? So here in the route, we have an issue, right? So what exactly the issue it is? So because this interactor exactly, it's expecting a couple of more parameters also. Let's try to create all these dependencies here. So const mailer will be new mailer, right? That is we have just created by here in external library package, this one, right? And you can see this implementing iMailer. So and iProduct and our product interactor exactly it's needed iMailer interface and iMessage broker interface. So in that case, this is gonna work, and let's try to create one broker also, new message broker, right? Now we can implement probably this one. Let's say this is going to be like mailer and broker, perfect. All right, so let's try to call our HTTP call from here, right? Let's go ahead and click on the get product. Yeah, it is working correctly. Let's open the console, and here we are going to update the stock, right? Let's try to update the stock. This is going to be like 50, and send a request. Can you see sending email is getting called? Even if we suppose create the product also, it is going to be called. Can you see? It's calling message broker. This is how it is working. All right, so this is really cool, right? So now let's come to the testing part. So I'm not going to write any kind of test cases, but I'm going to explain how exactly this whole thing's gonna work. As it said in the clean architecture principle, it's an every layer has to be testable. Even it may be repository, it may be maybe entity, or it may be anything, right? So in that case, how we can test it out? You can see while our use case layers are created, then only we can pass it all this type of the interfaces, right? The product repository, or maybe mailer, or maybe message broker. So here you can directly instantiate that specific class to your test file, right? And you can pass any type of the mock repository right here to test it out your whole layer. So you no need to climb right here in the controller in order to test that specific business logic. Only thing we need to test it out while we are creating the product, then it has to respond to the specific response, just like providing some kind of the product expectation and etc. That specific things already we have been covered in our previous episode in the TDD test event development using the Node.js also, and we have tested each and every layer right there. Right now you can see with the help of the clean architecture we have achieved a lot of flexibility. We can and at any time we can replace this Express framework with something else. At any time we can change our database to something else. At any time we can change our external libraries also, we decide something else, right? So one last thing we can do it right here. These are the things we have created manually, right? So we can use some kind of library to use a good quality of inversion of control and dependency injection, etc. So let's try to do that. So in that case, what we are going to do, we're going to use some kind of library that is called yarn at reflag metadata and Inversify and Inversify, right? Perfect. So now let's try to implement that. So now first thing we need to do, let's go to here in index.ts file, here, right here on the top of the file. We'll try to import reflag metadata. We don't need anything from here. This is called like import only. Yeah, this is perfect. Now let's go here in the routes, right? Here inside the routes, product routes, and we're going to get rid of all these things from here, right? And these are the things also we are going to get rid, right? So let's try to keep it like this way. What we are going to do, we are going to create one container const. Container will be our new container. This will come from Inversify, right? In the container, we need to bind all the services, all the interfaces, right? So in that case, let's go ahead here, create a directory here, right? Let's try to create a directory that is called utils. And inside utils, I'm going to create one file that is called index.ts, right? One more file let's try to create that is called const.ts, or maybe app const. All the constant we can keep it right here, right? The ts. And let's try to export this one. Export star from app const. Here inside the app const, we're going to add a couple of things, right? So here inside the app constant, right? Let's try to add something. This is going to be like export const, right? Inversify will be here, product repository, and this will be like symbol for, right? And this will be our product repository, and next will be our product inverter. This will be like symbol for, and product inverter, and here will be like product symbol for. Right? And we'll be also, right? This will be like symbol for here. Right? You might have thinking like why exactly these things are needed, right? So these things are needed in order to bind our dependency with the container, right? And we are using symbol for. Symbol for will be return a kind of symbol object from a global symbol registry, right? Matching by given key if found. Otherwise, it will return a kind of new symbol for this key, right? So this is how the symbol for is gonna work. So let's try to remove all these things because these are not make sense for us. Only we need just like a key and a value, right? And now let's go here in the product routes. Here we need to bind all the dependencies with the container, all right? So let's try to bind that one. Container, right? Dot bind, right? So bind, what exactly it's needed? It is needed some kind of the identifier. Those identifier already we have been added right here. You can see as a key value, right? So let's try to get all those things. But before that, we need to pass kind of type also, because we are only interested in the interfaces, not the instance directly that the specific class, right? So in that case, let's say product repository, and here we can say interface type, right? So what type of interface it is, like product repository, and to whom exactly? because this interface is perfectly fine, but to whom? Because we have just created that repository from that specific interface, right? So these things exactly we need to bind it right here to right? So in that case, let's say product repository class. Now our container will be bind certain interface with our certain class right here, right? Now let's go ahead and implement rest of all, right? Let's here and bind, and here we use like interface and interface will be our hyperconverter, and this is going to this here, this one, right? Now this is right? Now we do definitely like zero here, and this will like mirror, right? Here this will like mirror, and this will like mirror, right? Mirror, and this is way to process, and this worker, and this worker. One last thing we need to do, that is we need to bind with our controller as well as. So let's bind that one. Container bind. So in this case, interface type will be our controller, product controller, and to like product controller, right? So now everything is binded. So we have bind our controller also, but here it is showing the error, right? Because this controller, it says like controller not found. So in that case, what we need to do, we need to grab our controller instance also, right? How we can grab it? Let's try to grab it from our container. Const controller will be container.get and interface type. Here we need to say like a product controller. But can you see like this is unknown, right? Because it's not going to be comply. It doesn't have this methods. How we can get that specific type? By passing that specific type interface right here, right? That is going to be like say product controller, right? So now everything is working as expected, right? So now everything is cool. So we have replaced our manual the dependency injection with Inversify. You can go ahead and check it out, the Inversify documentation, and to how exactly we can achieve all these dependency injections, right? But one more thing we are missing right here, that is we need to take care. First of all, in order to work with this dependency, we need to mark all the classes, which is going to be like injectable, all right? So let's try to mark this repository one first, all right? Which is called injectable, right? But it is complaining, right? Why? Because we need to enable something in our TS config file also. Let's go here and you can say experimental decorator. Let's try to enable this one. Right? Now perfect. Let's try to save it. And you can see like this error has gone, right? The similar way, whatever we are going to use as a kind of dependency injection, all those class we need to mark it as a kind of injectable, all right? That is we need to do. So let's go ahead here in the interactor also, product interactor also. Here also we need to make it as a kind of injectable, right? Perfect. Now in the external libraries also we need to mark it as a kind of injectable here as well as injectable, right? And this is the thing we need to do in Mrs. Broker as well as, right? Let's try to import it. Cool. Now we have marked all the dependencies as an injectable, right? Now still a couple of things we need to take care of. The first thing is, if you go here in the repository, right, we can see like our constructor is using some kind of library that is perfectly fine. But for interactor, if you can see in the product interactor, these are the things we are manually passing, right? So this is not going to be work like this, right? So how we can replace all these things? So those are the things exactly. It's going to work just like we have added a couple of identifier right here in app constant. So with the help of this one, we can refactor this piece of code, right? So let's try to do that. So before this one, we can say like inject, and here we need to define like what type of repository it is, right? Let's say interface type. This is going to be like our product repository, right? This is product repository. Repository is iProduct repository. And here also we need to do the same, right? So let's try to copy this one with this is going to be like a mailer, and this is going to be like broker, Mrs. Broker. Perfect. So now this is perfect, right? So let's try to check it out. What are the other places are there? I think in the controller, right? In the controller also we are receiving this product interactor. So this is also we need to mark it something like this way. So here let's try to import this one. Inversify. And here also we need to mark it injectable. And injectable, right? And this is going to be like, this is also we need to import, right? Let's try to import. And here, this is going to be like our product interactor. Cool. Now I think everything is cool. So let's try to spin our application. We will check it out like whether everything is going well or not, right? But before that, let's try to remove all this commented out code. So at least we should have to be clean. Let's try to run the application, yarn dev. Perfect. So now it is running correctly, right? So let's try to hit our endpoints. I'm going to close all. Let's go here in the request.http. Let's try to get the data. Wow, cool. Perfectly able to get the data, right? Even we can update the stock as well as it is working, and we can able to create the product as well as. So now I hope you got a clear understanding of how this clean architecture is working and what is the beauty of the clean architecture. I hope you have enjoyed this video tutorial. If you like it, please hit the like button. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, subscribe it right now, because I'm gonna put a lot of useful tutorial in coming days. And in the next episode, we are going to work on our Prisma integration. So in this clean architecture, we have just achieved whatever we are just try to achieve throughout of our pipeline, right? You can see like, these are the pipelines we have covered, and we are hoping for like within shortly, we will be able to cover it up or rest of all the pending episodes as well as, right? All right, then see you in another episode. Bye-bye.